Bruce Lehrmann's defamation lawsuit against Network 10 journalist Lisa Wilkinson is back in the news this week. The final judgment of the case was due to be handed down today. However, the judge has now agreed to reopen the trial at the request of Network 10, and that's due to some new evidence. Now, Sam, we are talking about Bruce Lehrmann's case on the pod again today because while a decision on the defamation case was meant to be handed down today, it's been delayed in light of new evidence brought to the court by Network 10. Now, this story is so dense, it has so many twists and turns. I do think that to understand this latest development, we do need to rewind a bit and go back to cover some of the background.
I mean, this story has been going on for
years.
Months and years.
Years, yeah.
So without taking too long to go back on every single twist and turn, because there have been so many, what do we need to know about the background of the Bruce Lehrmann defamation case?
Okay, so in Feb 2021, former Liberal Party staffer Brittany Higgins alleged that she had been raped in Parliament House by a colleague. Higgins made the allegation in an article in news.com.au and in an interview with journalist Lisa Wilkinson, and that was on Network 10's The Project. Bruce Lehrmann was not named in the interview, but he argues he was still identifiable in the media coverage. It's important to note that he's always denied the allegations made by Brittany Higgins, and he maintains that position today. Now, in 2022, a criminal trial was declared a mistrial due to something called juror misconduct. So that just means that a juror broke the rules and conducted their own research in relation to the case. There ended up being no retrial because of, quote, a significant and unacceptable risk to the life of the complainant. So the complainant here being Brittany Higgins.
So the criminal trial ended with no conclusion. And then we moved from the criminal realm to the civil realm, and there were civil proceedings brought by Bruce Lehrmann for defamation, right?
That's right. So after the criminal trial was abandoned, Lehrmann launched defamation proceedings, and that brings us to 2023, last year. Now, a quick reminder, under defamation law, people can sue if they believe that published material has unfairly harmed their reputation.
Yeah.
So that's what the underpinning of this civil case was. Alongside Network 10, Lehrmann also sued news.com.au and the ABC, and that was over its broadcast of a press club speech by Brittany Higgins. So he sued both of those publications for defamation as well as Network 10. But we're not talking about those outlets, and we haven't spoken about those outlets in a while because they settled out of court with Bruce Lehrmann. And that left just Network 10 and its journalist Lisa Wilkinson as the subject of these defamation proceedings.
And so those proceedings have been the ones that were the focus for the back half of last year. And that was meant to have a decision being handed down today.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen, right?
That's not. So the defamation trial against 10 and Wilkinson began in November last year, ended in December last year. And just to cover off a bit of how the case worked, I think we definitely did a podcast on it at the time, but as I've said,
normally
many twists and turns.
It's me delivering the legal
exactly.
notes.
So essentially what needed to happen was to determine if Lehrmann had been defamed, the judge in this case had to answer two main questions. The first was Bruce Lehrmann identifiable in Network 10's broadcast?
So even though they didn't name him, could the public
still identify, put together the pieces to identify that it was Bruce Lehrmann who was the subject of these allegations?
Yep.
And two, if he was identifiable, were Brittany Higgins' allegations truthful?
And that's when a civil case kind of looks a little bit like a criminal case because they actually kind of have to identify
truth over allegation.
Yeah, so they were looking at CCTV footage from that night and trying to work out if Channel 10 did make these claims, whether they were true or not.
Yeah, but the result looks very different in a criminal case to a defamation case. And as you said, the judge was meant to deliver his decision on those two questions today. But as I foreshadowed at the beginning of this episode, that is not how things have turned out.
The case that always has another twist and turn about it. And that happened a couple of days ago because over the long weekend, Network 10 asked the judge to reopen the trial because there was new evidence they wanted to give to the court.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about this new evidence?
This new evidence centres around an interview that Bruce Lehrmann did with Channel 7's investigative program called Spotlight in June last year.
You said Channel 7, not Channel 10, right? Okay.
So we have a new player.
We're dealing with a new player.
Yes, Channel 7. The request to reopen the trial is based on two main issues. The first is around what Channel 7 did to convince Bruce Lehrmann to do the interview, and I'll extrapolate on that in a bit. The second is the alleged leaking of confidential information to Channel 7. So let's go through those one by one. The first is around this idea of expenses. So evidence submitted to the court last year confirmed that Channel 7 paid Bruce Lehrmann's rent for a year in Sydney. So that wasn't new information. We already knew that. Last month, news.com.au also published an allegation that Seven paid for a massage for Lehrmann, which he denied. Former Spotlight producer Taylor Albach has since alleged there were other payments, and this is this new evidence we're talking about, including reimbursing Lehrmann for, quote, illicit drugs and prostitutes. Albach also alleges one-time massage for Lehrmann and a friend totaled $10,315.
Wow.
Important to note, of course, that these allegations have not been tested in court, so as of now, they remain allegations. The second point goes to this idea of this alleged leaking. So the Spotlight program contained confidential information, including audio from a meeting between Higgins, so Brittany Higgins, Lisa Wilkinson, and a producer at the project. This is confidential material that was part of a police brief given to the ACT Supreme Court for the criminal trial.
The original criminal trial.
Exactly. It was not in the public domain before Channel 7 aired it. So when Channel 7 aired that Spotlight program, it was the first time that the public had ever heard those conversations.
Right.
During the trial, Lehrmann denied being the source of the leaked audio, but Network 10 and Wilkinson's lawyers have now suggested there's new evidence that contradicts this claim. Again, and I need to stress, these are only allegations and have not been tested in court. But together, this is the body of evidence that Network 10 brought to the judge over the long weekend to say, you need to reopen this trial because of these claims that we are bringing forward.
And I think it's helpful here to spend a second trying to get inside the head of the judge as to why he would even want to entertain something like this.
Consider it, yeah.
Because he's just poured over a lot of evidence and then taken the time away to write the judgment. Just before the judgment comes out, he's been given new evidence. And a lot of the commentary is that the key reason he wanted to reopen this is because no judge wants any questions surrounding their decision. You never want a decision to be handed down and then the public or the prosecution or the defense go, well, you didn't consider this one spanner that was thrown in later. He'd rather hear it out, listen to it, and make a decision with everything available. But to get your head around the timing is something else. Like, this case wrapped up so long ago. Why did Network 10 only bring this now?
It's a good question. I mean, it's a fairly simple answer. It's all happening now because of this Channel 7 producer I mentioned before, Taylor Albach. He, as the ex-producer of the Spotlight, who was heavily involved in the behind the scenes of creating that interview with Bruce Lehrmann, only just came forward with these allegations. So Albach has signed an affidavit, which is just a written statement for use of evidence in court to be entered into the case. So on Tuesday, less than 48 hours before a verdict was due, the judge allowed the case to be reopened so that they could hear Albach's allegations and, importantly, also give Lehrmann the chance to respond in court.
So that's what Tuesday's hearing was all about. It was all about the two sides making the case to the judge as to whether he should hear this evidence or not.
Yeah, it was remarkable. When I logged on to watch it, I think there were 15,000 other people watching just this part of the proceedings.
Yeah.
Like, there is so much interest
and
in
these are
story.
very dry court hearings.
So
like
dry.
they're about legal ideas, they're about process. What did Lehrmann's lawyers actually argue here?
I mean, as expected, his lawyers strongly opposed the reopening of the trial. I'm going to quote Matthew Richardson, who is the barrister representing Lehrmann. He said, "Just to be clear, obviously a lie under oath is an exceptionally serious matter. It's just that, in this case, both the principal witnesses are alleged by both sides to have told dozens of lies under oath." He continued, "This stuff is trivial, it's just not relevant. And to give, in my respectful submission, leave to reopen on that sort of material, Your Honour, would be inappropriate." Ultimately, the judge disagreed with this and has decided to reopen.
So from here, Taylor Albach and Bruce Lehrmann are going to get up and be questioned by both the prosecution and the defense. The judge is then going to go away, take some more time to incorporate this new evidence into his verdict. We'll never know whether his verdict will have changed or not. And then we'll have a new date for a new verdict. That's, of course, assuming...
And we'll do a new podcast.
And that's, of course, assuming there's no further evidence being brought to the court.
Exactly.